Morning all. I think everybody knows me. I'm Deputy Commissioner Michael Clement. I'm joined again by Scott Gallacher from MPI, Pat Tuohy from the Ministry of Health, and on my extreme right is Rob Forlong, Chief Executive, Evironmental Protection Authority. We each have a short statement and then we will all be available for your questions afterwards. Thank you. As of this morning, police have had 42 calls to our 0800 number or to the email contact that was provided on the 10th when we made our appeal to the community through the media. These have been in relation to a number of matters, but all of the information has been thoroughly assessed and will be dealt with appropriately. We are very grateful, as I've said several times and I'll repeat again today, for the community's help with regard to this investigation. I'm confident that it is going to play a significant part in a successful resolution to this investigation. Police are progressively visiting dairies in all districts to distribute information for consumers and business owners in relation to this investigation on behalf of the Ministry for Primary Industries. You'll have seen the measures which the major retailers have put in place over the last few days. It is important that all retailers selling infant formula have access to the same information for the benefit of all consumers. We are in the process of ensuring that we identify all retailers of infant formula. You'll be aware that the Operation Concord investigation team has started talking to a range of people out in the community who may have relevant information to our investigation. There are a large number of people that we want to speak to, and so it may be some days before we reach out to everybody who is relevant to our inquiry. We will do this in a meticulous and thorough way to ensure that nothing is missed. I should say that those that we are speaking to have been particularly helpful and they understand why we are speaking to them. I should also stress that just because we are speaking to these people, it does not make them a suspect in our investigation necessarily. We just want to know if they have information relevant to this investigation. We have also been contacted by some of you and other media over the last 24 hours in relation to historic issues involving 1080. I want to assure you that that approach is encouraged, and I would ask that you continue to do so, so that we can assess whether or not the information you are holding is within our investigation currently. Please don't let the fact that we say that we are already holding that information dissuade you from this approach. Finally, I would say again to the person who is responsible for the threatening letters, you know who you are. We want to speak to you. Please contact me or the investigation team. It is imperative that for the safety of all New Zealanders and the reassurance of all New Zealanders that you come forward and we can bring this investigation to a conclusion. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. As Mike said, I'm Scott Gallacher, the Deputy Director General at the Ministry for Primary Industries, and I'd like to just make a few initial observations and comments. First, I'd just like to pick up the point that we are aware that in the last 12 to 24 hours there have been some reports around the possibility that some infant formula and other product exports might have been blocked at the border in China because of any new requirements that have been imposed by our counterpart agencies in China as a result of this criminal blackmail threat. In particular, we are aware through a third party of one small exporter who may have been experiencing some of those problems, and the Ministry for Primary Industries is following that up with the exporter. Overnight, we have had significant engagement with our counterparts in China on this specific issue, and they have advised us that they are not aware of any consignments being held up as a result of this criminal blackmail threat. However, I would like to make the point that if any of our exporters are experiencing any difficulties in any market, then they should please contact the Ministry for Primary Industries, and we will engage immediately with the relevant authorities to address any issues in relation to those consignments. On that front, I'd probably like to just note that on top of a wide range of clearance times and issues that all exporters experience on any international market and in any border around the world, we do know that exports can be held up for a variety of reasons, and requirements and clearance times can vary between countries, but also between ports in the same country. And that is why it's always very important that when people are having issues, if they reach out to the Ministry for Primary Industries, if we're dealing with any primary industry exports, then we will immediately engage and contact the relevant authorities in whatever market we're dealing with to ensure that trade can continue to flow. On that question, in terms of international markets, the Ministry for Primary Industries, in conjunction with our colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, have continued to have incredibly close communications with a wide range of our trading partners. This includes China, where New Zealand officials have been continuing to work very closely with our Chinese counterparts on this issue, and will continue to do so. And we have very much appreciated the positive and constructive way in which this engagement has occurred. We've also had incredibly constructive and positive engagement and feedback from all of our markets. And I think that has been incredibly positive and is a testament on the back of the high level of assurance and confidence we can provide international markets as to the safety and integrity of our exports. Finally, I would just like to emphasize that the full range of measures we have in place across the manufacturing, retail, and wider supply chains give us the confidence to be able to tell mums and dads around the world that New Zealand infant and other formula product is as safe now as it was prior to this threat. And that will continue to be the case, whether it's later this afternoon, next week, or next month. And I think that is really on the back of a huge amount of work which the manufacturers, suppliers, and retailers have done in conjunction with the government to ensure we can give that sort of assurance to everyone concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Dr. Pat Tuohy from the Ministry of Health. I'd like to make 2 points. The first really is building off what Scott has said, is that the message that infant formula in New Zealand and produced for overseas markets is as safe today as it was before the threat was made seems to be getting through to parents and caregivers. Both the media reports that we've been seeing and the information we've been getting through our primary sources such as Healthline, Plunket Line and hospitals suggests that the level of anxiety is reducing. The Healthline reports of questions about children has halved overnight or over the last 24 hours. Plunket Line didn't receive any calls for symptomatic children overnight. I've rung around the major hospitals this morning and neither their ED department nor their children's wards have had any admissions or presentations with significant concern. They're all ready to go if any children should become unwell and present. But the second point I'd like to make is that if children do become unwell, the overwhelming likelihood is that that is a condition which is a serious medical condition that can be treated if it's identified early. And one of the important things for parents to do is to go to their child health book, which every child gets when they're born in New Zealand, and look at the back page and just remind themselves about the symptoms of illness in children. And if your child is ill, the most important thing you can do is to seek medical help, advice. Healthline is a really good place to start. It's a free 0800 number. Call your GP. If your child is really ill, you call 111 and get them into hospital. As I said, the probability that any really sick child is going to be poisoned with 1080 is remote, but we see in our paediatric wards and paediatric intensive care units sick children with a whole lot of other conditions such as meningitis or pneumonia, which are treatable and able to be managed if identified early. So that's all I have to say at this stage, but later be happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
So overnight, China's General Administration of Quality and Food Division Inspection and Quarantine said that they were requiring New Zealand companies importing milk powder to have government certification and an importer's examination. Are you guys okay with that?
Well, I think we're still in discussions with our Chinese counterparts, but everything they've been asking questions of and requests from our behalf, we're very confident and comfortable with that. And in fact, much like for me to sit here today and continue to highlight that the product is as safe as it is now as it was prior to the threat, we're also very confident to let people know that any exports flowing out of New Zealand, whether it's today or last week or next week, will be free from 1080 contamination as a result of the full range of measures we now have in place. And so in the context of the request we've had from China in relation to us being able to stand shoulder to shoulder with manufacturers and exporters on that front, we can do so. It is very easy for us to do that because we have every confidence in the product that is leaving New Zealand shores.
So you will be issuing certificates for the milk powder that's already left the country?
We're still working through with the Chinese authorities on the precise nature of what they would like to see. But as I said, overnight we've had, again, tremendous and positive discussions with our Chinese counterparts. And as I said, overnight they've indicated that they are unaware of any consignments being stopped at the border as a result of this criminal blackmail threat.
What's the EPA's involvement? Did you have a statement to deliver?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for that. My name's Rob Forlong. I'm the Chief Executive of the EPA. The EPA is the regulator for hazardous substances, which includes 1080. As you'll be aware, 1080 is a vital tool for protecting the natural environment and our primary industry. And it's currently the best option for land managers to control bovine TB and for the protection of large areas of forest and native wildlife. It's also probably the most highly regulated toxin used in New Zealand, and the EPA has reviewed this toxin once. The Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment's also reviewed this toxin, and we have strong controls on it. So really, I just wanted to be here to answer any questions on that.
Deputy Commissioner, I've got a couple of questions around the early phase of the investigation. I was just hoping to go into the logistics. Roughly how many people were under surveillance in the first 3 months? How many people were questioned and whereabouts were they based in New Zealand? Can you tell us a bit?
I'm probably going to disappoint you on all fronts, I suspect. But for reasons I think I've tried to explain before, is that that was a phase of the investigation that we conducted away from the public eye, and I'd rather not be drawn on the numbers, the location of them, or what tactics or techniques were used in terms of the approach that was taken. But certainly that first phase of the investigation was very useful in terms of getting us to the place where we find ourselves now in terms of being more overt or public with regard to our investigation.
Now, and in that phase now, can you maybe elaborate on those same details now that you're in public?
Well, I still won't and can't, probably for reasons I hope you understand, talk about police techniques with regard to that, but the obvious and logical one is to simply speak to people, because that's where the most information comes from. So, and that's certainly the phase that we're very comfortable in, and it's certainly, as I indicated earlier, and we're getting really positive feedback from those that we're approaching. So I don't think there is any report from my investigators that says that everybody is in a place that's different to how we all think in this room, and that is that this is an abhorrent threat. Nobody identifies with it. Everybody sees it as going way too far in terms of any cause they might have. So I'm yet to see or hear a dissenting voice with regard to that. So that's really encouraging as far as we're concerned.
In terms of the pool that of people that you need to question, how far from that are you? Are you
Well, there's a vast number of people. I won't go into numbers. I mean, and some people self-select in terms of thinking that they have something to offer, and that's important too. So, people to the to our 0800 number or email number or any other means by which they might contact police say, "Hey, what about speaking to me?" And that's for the reasons that they might have an opinion with regard to things. So that's fine by us too. So it's not everybody dobbing in their neighbour, so to speak. It's those that think that they should be heard with regard to this threat. And we encourage all comers. I mean, we may not get to everybody tomorrow, and we have to go through a process of prioritising and assessing the value of what those people might have, but we'll get to them eventually. That shouldn't stop people coming forward feeling disillusioned because we haven't spoken to them yet. That's not because they're not important. It's just that there are a vast number to work through.
Have police gained any forensic evidence from the letter?
I won't go into whether or not we have forensic evidence. I can confirm, though, we've put the letters and the envelopes through a vast array of forensic examination, the full range that you would expect, DNA and fingerprints and handwriting specialists and some linguistic interpretation of the way in which the letters have been written. So, and we continue to do that. That process is not finished yet.
On Tuesday you said that the letter might be released at some point, possibly. Are we any nearer to getting that or knowing when that could be? Or?
That's just a process that we work through day by day. To be honest, if we were to show our hand completely, then that can be a disadvantage for the investigation. I'm very mindful, obviously, of the interest of the media and the community in the letters themselves. But really, it's a fairly standard investigative approach, is that we do retain some stuff to the investigation for those reasons, that that's something that's known to the offender or offenders and the police only.
Can you take us through a little bit about how 1080 is regulated? We were talking a lot yesterday about particularly the white versus the pallets and how accessible that is to a normal person.
Okay, so the controls around 1080 focus on protecting people and the environment from harm, and I suppose broadly speaking they limit who can access 1080. They require tracking or records kept of the location and movement, and they require it to be stored in secure facilities. So that's sort of how it works. The controls are about this thick, so there's a lot of detail behind that.
Yesterday we were looking on Trade Me, and it was you could purchase 1080 on Trade Me. I mean, is that normally allowed, or do the controls apply to that, or is that something that police are also looking into?
So in order to purchase 1080 legally, you're required to have 2 tickets, I suppose is the best way to talk about it. One's to be an approved handler, and that means you've been certified as being able to handle the substance safely. And the second is to have a controlled substance licence, which certifies that you are a fit and proper person. And the test for that is you've got to be over 17, you've got to require it for a pest control purpose, and you've got to have undergone a police check.
So were you aware that it is being sold on Trade Me? Is that a concern to you? Or the people selling it would have to make sure that the person selling it...
They're required to do that.
Are you checking up on that?
The police are looking at all these things. So.
But previously, were you aware that people selling on Trade Me and they need to be monitored?
We check Trade Me regularly for a number of things, and certainly the compliance agency, who's WorkSafe New Zealand, they have a risk-based program of assessing compliance with the hazardous substances parts of the legislation.
Any more questions? Are we done?
Maybe I've got a question. I mean, this might be a bit of a dramatic way to put it, but is there kind of any black market of 1080? So on Trade Me it's being sold, and that would obviously be illegal, but are you aware of or have any idea where this may have come from, if labs are so secure and farmers or groups who have licences? Is there any form of something like, say, a black market?
Not that I'm aware of.
How easy would it be to access it from overseas illegally and get it in illegally?
I couldn't comment on that. It would be illegal, and my assessment of by looking at the regulations is it would be very difficult to access, full stop, and I don't think you could do that without breaking the law.
So at this stage, do you think the source, would you think that the source is from within New Zealand as opposed to being outside of New Zealand?
Well, it all originates from outside of New Zealand, so I don't think that's what you're asking particularly, but it's fair to say that on Trade Me or in the controlled drug environment, for instance, people find a way of circumventing the law and can be motivated to do that. So we couldn't rule that out. And as I've said all along, is we've got to consider all possible sources with regard to 1080, and we're in the process with EPA and WorkSafe New Zealand of making sure that we are as familiar as we can be of the full range of potential sources of 1080. And if Trade Me is one of those, then that will be one of the sources that we consider. It would be most unwise, I would think, for people to be advertising openly on Trade Me, selling 1080 in the current environment or any other environment for that matter. But if it's something that you're telling me is happening, then I can check up after this conference and I will make sure that we're across that.
So at this stage, police haven't looked into the people being able to access it on sites like Trade Me yet?
No, I'm not saying we have or haven't. I have not had a particular conversation about it. We're trying to identify all of the potential sources with regard to accessing 1080. So if that's one that the team is onto, then that's great. If they're not, then they soon will be.
There's obviously a lot of tighter controls going on at the moment. Prime Minister's been saying that government ground to a halt with all of this. How long down the track are you actually going to keep all of these tight controls and monitoring up? Previously, you've received letters and you've never found the people that sent them. So where's the deadline on all this?
Well, I wouldn't say we've never identified letter writers. It is pretty complex, I'll agree with that. We have identified those that are motivated to step over the line with regard to 1080 and other substances for that matter in the same way. But it is pretty complex when someone puts in a lot of effort to make sure that it can't be found. So in terms of how long it goes for, we want to make sure that we've reached out to all of those that are relevant to this investigation. As I've been saying throughout, this investigation won't suffer for lack of effort on behalf of police or any of the other agencies involved. How long the tail is with regard to that, I can't be specific, but there's an important lesson for policing in particular is that the more people that we reach with regard to this particular issue and issues of a similar nature, I think the more reassured our communities will be. And so that's what I give you an undertaking around.
Does it look like this person has actually gone to a lot of length to make sure that their tracks are covered?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I think, writing anonymously is a start. So they clearly don't want to identify themselves. I'm inviting them to come forward and identify themselves now. As I have since the 10th. I think they'll appreciate that this has gone too far. I can't imagine any right-thinking person thinking that this is the way to go about addressing their attitude to 1080 if that's in fact what the motivating factor is in this case.
Some years back, there was a false scare of foot and mouth on Waiheke Island. The person who sent the letter, I think, to the Prime Minister's office was never found. Are you confident that you'll be able to find this person?
What I'm confident about is that we will apply all of the investigative resource and we will be partnered up as we are here at this table today and outside of the people sitting at this table in a way that makes sure that we give this our best shot. So that's what I can give you confidence about. So if it's possible through the investigative techniques and the cooperation of others, including yourselves, to find this person, then we will find that person. So I continue to rely on your help, and I thank you once again for the assistance that you've been, because we're reaching all corners of New Zealand and beyond as a result of the help that you're providing.
In terms of the tighter control stuff, and Scott, this might be more you, but Nick Smith yesterday, the tighter controls on research labs and that sort of stuff, is that just going to be how it is from now on, or do you see there being some sort of a deadline on that stuff as well?
probably me, is it?
Well, I think probably Rob in the first instance, since that was Minister Smith under the portfolio of Minister for the Environment. So maybe Rob could go first.
Yeah, that'll be permanent.
And so then, I mean, do you think that there should be, you're saying that it's hard to track down an anonymous letter writer, should there be more security around mail stamping and all that kind of stuff?
We haven't given too much thought to that yet, to be honest, but I think every time something like this happens, we subtly adjust our operating procedures and our investigative techniques, and this is a case in point because we've gone outside of New Zealand to other jurisdictions just to test ourselves with regard to the way in which we investigate. That came up yesterday, I think, with regard to the subtle difference between New Zealand and some other jurisdictions. So we'll have to contextualise it to New Zealand, but we're pretty confident that we're aware of the investigative techniques that can be applied to investigation of this type, but that won't stop us continuously looking for improvement.
Sorry, just to clarify, did you say before that the police will be visiting retailers?
Well, we're in the process at a request of, in cooperation with MPI, visiting all dairies. But as part of that process, we'll look across the system to make sure that if there is a wider distribution network in the retail sense than just dairies, then we will make sure that we are familiar with those distributors as well, because we want to make sure that all consumers have the absolute same advice and protection regardless of where they access formula.
So, all dairies throughout the country, how long do you expect that will take?
Well, there's a number of them. So we've done this exercise previously with psychoactive substances when we had a bit of an issue with those. So it can be done within a space of a couple of weeks. We don't want it to take too long, obviously, because the sooner we reach all purchasers of the product and all retailers, then the more confident that we'll be that everybody is being vigilant. And as we've all spoken of in the last few days, vigilance is a big part of the equation here, is that, and we're seeing it in terms of the calls that are coming into police and MPI and others. You know, consumers are being vigilant. They are finding things that they're not happy with. They are ringing and they are asking for advice, and that's exactly what we encourage.
All right, we're at 10:30 now. I've just been told there is going to be a fire alarm test very shortly, so maybe one more question. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.